Hey everyone, it's Clarke Camper with another edition of Wall Street and Washington. Today I'm coming to you from a new location just outside the iconic facade of the New York Stock Exchange itself. Wanted to talk to you today about three things. First, wanted to talk again about the ongoing efforts to raise the federal debt ceiling. Second, would like to talk about some slippage in the time frame for finalizing derivatives regulations. And third, wanted to update you on some of our efforts to represent listed companies in Washington. First, in terms of the efforts to increase the federal debt ceiling, I don't mean to say I told you so, but frankly, things are playing out much as I had expected. The political theatrics are in full season, and as I have discussed in previous editions of Wall Street and Washington, I would expect that those theatrics and the drama will continue all the way through very close to the time frame that's been set of August 2nd. Now, I don't want to bury the lead because the real important takeaway is I continue to believe very strongly that there will indeed be some kind of agreement to raise the federal debt ceiling. Anyone who tells you exactly what that agreement is going to look like, I think is not being completely honest, but the bottom line is we will indeed get an agreement on increasing the federal debt ceiling. Remember, we're dealing in terms of the lead players in this effort with three very seasoned politicians. The president, with House Speaker Boehner, with Senate Majority Leader Reid, and they're all very seasoned politicians who know how to get a deal done. So again, I am very confident they will get a deal done. However, one of the missing pieces, or at least a piece that's gotten a little bit less attention here that I find more interesting, is really the way that this whole debate has opened up the cleavage between, or maybe I should say has really put a spotlight on the cleavage between Wall Street and Washington. You know, I'm not a fan of the old adage of how Wall Street is Venus and Washington is Mars, or the other way around, but you get the idea, the idea that neither of them really understand each other. I've said that I think that adage is unfair. It doesn't give enough credit to either side. However, I would say that the longer this debate about the debt ceiling goes on, the more I do think that adage becomes true. Many on Wall Street are dumbfounded at what they see as politicians toying with a very explosive situation. I've heard some people describe it as watching the politicians working on the debt ceiling as looking at a caveman trying to disassemble an atomic bomb. Meanwhile, folks in Washington say, why are the folks in New York so upset about these things? We've been very clear that the deadline is August 2nd. We're going to get it done. So the bottom line is, for people like me who have to straddle the two worlds, this is one of those cases where it's much more difficult to interpret each side for the other, and at some point we just have to sort of agree to disagree and understand that both sides are not going to fully understand each other. Second, moving on to the time frame for finalizing derivatives regulations. Since the last edition, the CFTC made official what had become apparent for some time, and that is that derivatives regulations will not be finalized until at least the end of 2011. Now, personally, crystal balling it, I think even that time frame is aggressive. It's going to be very difficult to get agreement in the U.S. on regulations by then. There are a couple things going on. One is there's not a consensus on the CFTC itself. There is certainly not consensus in the Congress about what these regulations should look like, and we've seen growing political pressure to delay or maybe defer altogether those regulations. I don't think that they're going to get deferred altogether. I do think the regulations will come out, but I do think that congressional pressure, if anything, will get louder as we get closer to the 2012 elections. Combine that situation with the fact that in Europe, they always run a little slower time frame for finalizing their derivatives regulations, and that, if anything, on the European side, things have slipped. So we have a situation, all told, where I think, again, it's very unlikely that derivatives regulations will be finalized by the end of the year. That may be good news for those of you who are not looking forward to burdensome new regulations. It's obviously very challenging news for people who have to manage in the interim and run their businesses. Finally, I wanted to say a few words and update you about something I haven't done in a while, and that is our advocacy efforts in Washington, and in particular to represent our listed companies. We're doing a number of things under our issuer advocacy initiative. One, for instance, is a series of roundtables that we've been holding this year. These are opportunities for issuers to come to Washington and meet with an array of policymakers, both on the Hill and in the executive branch, on a particular topic. So, for instance, our most recent roundtable was on tax policy at the end of June. We had 20 or 25 issuers come and spend a day talking with key policymakers. Earlier this year, we also had issuer roundtables that focused on capital formation and job growth. But again, that's another example of our efforts to provide an opportunity for listed companies to have their voice better heard in Washington. Another example of our issuer advocacy efforts is the more traditional aspect of lobbying, and that is advocating for specific legislation that we believe will be good for issuers. For instance, in June, the House Financial Services Committee passed out a bill that would make it easier for smaller listed companies to go public. That bill is sponsored by Representative Dave Schweikert of Arizona. We've been extremely active in that effort. We'll continue to do so as hopefully action moves towards the Senate. So with that, I'll wrap it up. Thanks for watching another edition of Wall Street in Washington.